This is yet another MBA GO.A.T, a podcast featuring conversations with the greatest of all-time MBA alumni from the Naveen Jindal School of Management at the University of Texas at Dallas. We are here to celebrate the outcomes of graduate management education and to identify remarkable examples of how the MBA program here at the Jindal School has transformed the lives of our alumni. Now, here's Lisa Shatz, Assistant Dean for the Jindal School's MBA Programs. Take it away, Lisa.
Hey, you guys. Welcome back to another MBA GO.A.T podcast. We are happy to have Travis Kemp with us today. He is an evening cohort alum. He has been working at, and is still working at AT&T. And welcome, Travis. We're glad to have you.
Thanks, Lisa. Excited to be here.
Well, let's jump right in. So I have my first question for you has to do with your background. And I'm guessing you don't know this, but you are from Ontario, Canada. And I am guessing you don't know that I grew up a mile from the border from Cornwall, Ontario. So,
oh, God. Okay.
I am almost Canadian. If you count the number of drinks anybody drinks in high school toward your nationality, the majority of them were in Canada. So
yeah. Okay. So, that's as Canadians, we're always happy to welcome Americans across the border when they have to get a few legal drinks before it's legally allowed.
That's right. And I was ecstatic when a restaurant went in nearby here in Dallas that had poutine, because I had not had that since the many nights at 2 a.m. when we picked it up in Cornwall.
Yeah, this all sounds a little too familiar. So, well, very cool.
So tell me a little bit about your move from Canada, because I think you were a college golf player. And
correct.
Is that why you came to the United States to play golf for Northwood University?
Yeah, so I was, I'm trying to think back. So yeah, I did all of my schooling all through high school up in Canada. I was actually planning to do my undergraduate at a school, the local university where I lived. And then about a month before basically being ready to go to class, I was just like, this isn't what I want to do. Like I knew I wanted to go to the US and play golf on a scholarship. It just hadn't lined up to that point. And so I spent a year working part-time and golfing. I was even fortunate to live in Phoenix for a few months. But then, ultimately I was able to sign a scholarship with Northwood University in Cedar Hill, Texas, and did my undergrad there. And so people kind of laugh, right? Like, so what does that mean? Well, we would go to class till about 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and then we would go golfing. But at the same time, it was a whole different experience coming from Canada, right? I'd been fortunate enough to travel to the US a lot, Texas a little bit, but yeah, picking up when you're 19 years old and just moving to a different country was a whole different experience, candidly.
Yeah, I certainly have seen trends with MBA students who are athletes, either professionally or in college, that regardless of the sport, it just requires so much discipline to do a whole other, basically a whole other school on top of your school. So do you feel like being an athlete helped you to get the skills that you needed to do well, either in business or in your college and MBA program?
Yeah, no, I absolutely it did. I think a lot of what, you hear the stories of Division I football players taking, whatever joke you want to make up about the degree they're taking. But for a lot of athletes, that's not really the story, right? I think for me, sure, there was a part of me that wanted to think I could play professional golf, but I knew that probably wasn't the realistic path. And so instead, it was more use golf as a vehicle to help pay for school. And so it gave me an opportunity to, while I wouldn't sit here and say Northwood University was my dream school, it gave me the first step of what I know I wanted to do. I always knew I wanted to get a master's degree. And so for me, that was the first step to do that, right? Get my undergrad. But to your question, really the balance of maintaining it all was really what I've carried in a lot of what I've done. So I also, maybe crazily, I was also a resident assistant while I was there. And so kind of that's essentially a job in and of itself. So kind of managing all three at once is, it was a very good experience for me in a lot of different ways. And I think what a lot of athletes will tell you is what you learn in terms of having teammates and particularly leading people in an athletic situation goes a long, long way as you get into the business world or really a corporate setting. So the golf team at the time, so for those that collegiate golf, you essentially have a team of anywhere from, we'll say, 8 to 12 players, but only 5 go to a tournament. So only 5 play at any one time. So the 5 of you go together, but you still play completely independently. It's just you take the best 4 scores of the 5 of you. So it's a weird dynamic of when you're physically playing, you can't influence anyone else. Like you're all just out there doing your own thing. But when you're practicing, when you're doing everything else, you have to inspire, work together, whatever the term you want to use. And so when I was in college doing my undergrad, we had kind of a weird phase where we had a changeover in coaches. And then all of a sudden we ended up with a whole bunch of new recruits that were a couple years younger than me. So this would have been my junior year. And so it taught me a lot about leading and how to really work with people and kind of inspire people to do the best at whatever they're doing. And I think that's helped me a lot as I've gone into a corporate setting and working with teammates.
So as you talk about leadership, that leads in well to your career at AT&T, which you clearly are a juggler because you went through not 1 degree program here, but 2. You did your MBA and your MS in analytics at the same time as being married and working, and now are expecting a little girl. So you've got a lot of this stuff going on, and yet you managed in the last 7 years to be promoted 6 times. So it was not your work at AT&T that was suffering for those extra hours. So talk a little bit about how you did manage all that and manage to have all those hours that you're applying to school and clearly not having that detract at all from your efforts at AT&T.
Yeah, no, that's, I'm not sure there is a perfect answer. I'll try and spell it out a little bit from my experience. So for me, I was pretty set that I wanted to do the MBA and pretty set in how I wanted to do it from a timing perspective. So the way I looked at it is I was early in my career and I felt like it was easier, we'll say, I'm not going to say easy, but easier to juggle at that time. And it probably sounds a little cliche, but I had very, very supportive management. Both my boss and boss's boss were very supportive of my decision. And I think for anyone, it sounds like, oh, it'll be fine, I'll figure it out. No, you have to have leadership that understands what you're going to go through. And that doesn't mean, hey, my work ethic is going to fall off, or, hey, I'm not going to be able to get this deliverable done. No, it's, I need you to understand the flexibility I'll need from a time perspective. And so that may mean, hey, on Monday nights, I'm not really reachable, but I'll make sure I get it done on Tuesday mornings or whatever it may be. I found for myself when I was in the program, it was, I think most of my classes, if I remember, were Monday, Wednesdays. And so Tuesdays, Thursdays, it was getting to the office a little earlier or staying a little later. Like I just had to find ways to expand my working time when it was there. Now, the flip side, what I'll say is I think it taught me a lot about how to be more efficient with my time when you're in the moment. And so particularly at the office, I think COVID may have changed the experience a little bit, but there's still a reality that there's a lot of dead time at the office. There's a lot of water cooler talk time and all these other things that I found myself not quite involved in some of those things at the office. It was, no, I need to focus specifically on my job and what I need to do to deliver and keep putting out a high quality work product so that I'm still excelling in what I do. And so it was probably some of those other things at the office. It's probably no surprise AT&T is an enormous company. And so there's a lot of other things you can spend your time doing, if it's from employee groups, right? Networks of different people, if it's community involvement, there's all kinds of different things you can do. And so I kind of took a step back from a lot of those types of things. And that probably helped me quite a bit, honestly.
You are currently the chief of staff for global supply chain. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Yeah. So what is it that you do in your day-to-day today that you can attribute directly back to, I learned this in my MBA program, or that you can look back and say, this is something that made it easier for me to do what I'm doing today?
The single most linear connection thing I can make is the organization time management, working through everything together. the chief of staff role at AT&T is it's a very interesting role because it's a little village of chiefs of staff within all the different departments. And we kind of all have to work together to make sure, hey, my boss is meeting with your boss. Do you have what you need? Is there something we're missing? Hey, so-and-so has this meeting next week. Do they have the materials they need? Have we prepared the right thing? And so really the end of the day, the role is all bound in organization and also the ability to work with people, which outside of the academic nature of the program, an MBA, that's really what it is at its core. It's right. Can you organize yourself and can you work with other people? And I think a lot of what I learned from the program was we had a lot of different personalities, and the way the program was set up to, you have to go work with so-and-so this time, but maybe you can pick your group next time, but it really doesn't matter because no matter what you do, you have to work with different people and lean on them. And they also have to lean on you. And maybe you have to have some hard conversations or whatever it might be. Honestly, it's the ability to work with others. I've been in this role, June will be a couple of years. And so as I think about it, for me, the biggest thing has just been the ability to work with others. I've always tried to maintain this ideology where whatever I'm doing at AT&T and quite frankly anywhere is, if you are pleasant to work with and you are just a good person, at the end of the day, good things will come to you. Maybe it doesn't happen as fast as someone else, or maybe not as much as you want. But if you develop those positive relationships, things usually tend to work out.
You know, it's funny you say that because we have those conversations so often in admission meetings, because we'll be talking about candidates and, you know, we don't have an endless number of seats. You know, we have an infinite number in both the evening cohort and the full-time cohort. And so at the end of the day, when we have multiple candidates who have, you know, good scores and good grades, are clearly smart enough, we find so often it does come down to just what you said. Is this somebody likable? Is this somebody that people are going to like to work with? Is this somebody who's going to bring everybody up to the same level? And clearly, like in your case, you had that ability and you used that skill. And I'm guessing, and our listeners might not know this, but our class is structured in a way that our teams, the students are in student teams and work really closely together. Those are a really critical part of the program. And I'm guessing that even when you were in the program, even though that wasn't your official role like it is today at AT&T, you were probably the one doing that in your team. You're probably the one organizing and keeping everybody up and keeping everybody on the same target. So if there were an election and it was the who's most likely to be chief of staff at AT&T, you probably would have won it anyway.
Well, perfect. Yeah. So then maybe I'm not too far from what I think I am, but I think that's absolutely right. The beauty of an MBA program is the personalities it brings together. So most companies you work with, right, you may end up in cross-functional teams or you may meet some other people, but most of your day-to-day is spent with people doing a similar function to you, right? Be it my group at AT&T, we do the negotiations. So most of the people are, you know, I'm talking with are the negotiators. But then if I take a step back and think about the MBA program, right, we had accountants, we had people from marketing, we had engineers, we had kind of anything and everything you can think of, never mind backgrounds, just purely what people spent during their day doing. And so I think that as well just gave me an ability to understand how to work with others. And that was really one of the best things for me from the program experience was how do you maximize the output of the people around you?
So I asked you the question about what you learned in school that you apply today. So I'm going to turn it around a little bit and ask you about what you might not have had the chance to learn or do. Is there an experience or something that you did not do in the program or something you didn't learn in the program that going back again, you would say, this is something that if I had it to do over, I would? Yeah,
that's a really good question. So for me, and excuse me, I'm thinking a little bit about, I think honestly, the biggest thing that I understood its importance at the time, but I'm not sure to the degree at which I wish I did, was just how important influence and understanding organizational behavior characteristics. So I took a couple organizational behavior classes. We had the one in the program. I took a couple as electives. For example, I took a power and influence class that was very fascinating, but I really wish I probably would have double clicked or even further into that, because I'm number one, continually fascinated by that. But secondly, I knew it was important, but I didn't realize how important it was, right? When you get into an organization, it doesn't really matter the size, to understand why people are doing the things they do in terms of where their influence comes from and what they're trying to achieve. Taking a step back and understanding those different dynamics and how they interact, I personally think is a very important thing in understanding how to get something done at a company. And so the ability to really think through, okay, Joe over here is saying this, but what really is Joe's motive and what is Joe trying to achieve? That's something I wish I would have taken a more, we'll say, academic experience through the program doing it. I really just scratched the surface, but I think those are skill sets that, candidly, even since the program's finished, I'm constantly trying to read on or at least understand in whatever forum I can.
This episode is brought to you by the UT Dallas MBA program, top ranked nationally and in Texas. The UT Dallas MBA combines a robust core with 13 concentrations. You have an option to add a second master's degree, and your choices for that include 5 STEM-designated programs. The MBA program has full-time, part-time, online, and other formats. They give you flexibility to fit your MBA education into your busy schedule. The skills and training you will receive are what top employers are looking for. For more information, visit us online at jindal.utdallas.edu/MBA.
One of the things that you've been involved in since you graduated in 2018 is giving back in the program, whether it's working with individual students or sitting on panels. Can you talk a little bit about your interaction with the program since you've been out, and maybe a little bit about the interaction you had with other alums when you were in the program?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I always felt like UTD gave me a lot. And so the panels I've always enjoyed. I think I've done at least 2 or 3 of them, if I can remember correctly. And I always just feel like it's a cool opportunity to share with people a bit of the why and then my experience. The way I've always tried to look at it is if someone's looking to go in to do their MBA, that there's a lot of questions that Lisa, you and others can answer, but that the real feel of talking to someone, particularly a recent graduate, is very helpful. And so I remember when I was looking at UTD and considering it, my experience talking to panelists, or at least recent alums, gave me a lot of confidence in the program, candidly. I was in a situation where I'm in the DFW area, I'm working full time, I want to do an evening program. What's something where I know it's going to maximize the value of both the money I'm spending, but as well the time I'm spending? And so the recent alumni gave me a lot of confidence in the program. And so that's something I've always wanted to pass along, because so many things we deal with, right? How people interact now is based on peer reviews. That's just how humans have kind of become conditioned to believe in a product. And so that's something that for me was very beneficial and helped convince me, and then ultimately something I'm trying to pass along too.
So that ties into a really good question, because some of the people listening to this podcast might not be current students or alum. They might be prospective students who are thinking about an MBA program. So what you said when you were looking, you were talking to alum here, and that was helping you make your decision. And I think most students who are looking at MBA programs, especially PIMBA programs where they're working during the day, are looking at multiple choices in Dallas.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what advice you'd have for them as far as looking at programs, and what, you've already said you talk to alumni. What other things should they be doing to make sure they find the program that's the right fit for them?
Spend the time to think what format works for you. I know COVID and other things have changed what a format looks like, right? But really take the time to think what the right format for you is. Is that all online? Is that a mix? Whatever it might be. And so once you figured out what your ideal format is, I kind of knew which schools I wanted to look at in the area, but candidly, until I really took the time to go meet with information sessions, alumni, those types of things, I didn't really fully understand the program, right? I think there's a lot of not misconceptions, just preconceived notions about what a program is or isn't. And I had a lot of those until I really started looking around. And I probably spent, I'm trying to think, at least half a year, if not more, before I applied, just going to information sessions or researching, or just taking the time to think through what it is that I want in a program. And so ultimately, when I went to UTD, I think a lot of the experience was the admissions experience was very welcoming. And everyone I spoke to was done in a way where I could tell, like, this is a program I relate to. It's not trying to be something that it doesn't need to be. It's very meant to be flexible, meant to be a mix of people, meant to be a cohort that you can grow with. And so I found a lot of, when I went through the admissions process, I just kind of gained confidence as I went. And then, as I shared earlier, speaking with alumni really kind of put it over the finish line for me.
Those alumni that you met with, are those people that you found on your own, or did the admissions folks here connect you with people?
It was mostly through the admissions folks at UTD. I'm trying to think. I had a couple through AT&T who'd not been through the evening program, but had been through separate programs and spoke highly of the school. So that was certainly a good starting point. But mostly the ones that could really give me the experience was through the admissions program.
Great. Well, that's a great advice for the prospective students who are listening. You know, one thing I say all the time, and I mean it, and I live it, is that I don't believe that UT Dallas is the greatest program for every single student. I think that students need to be savvy and think about what they really want. The great thing is students today I remember, you know, back in the 90s when I got my MBA, we just weren't that savvy about what to know, to ask.
Yeah.
We were much less inclined to say, this is what I want, and I'm finding it. I'm not going to spend all this money and all this time unless you can provide me exactly what I want. And that's just a change that's happened kind of generationally, which I think, you know, your generation is just, you know, so much wiser to be very particular when something's life altering, like a big degree program that they're going to get, they want out of it. So kudos. And I hope every student takes that approach. There's nothing else that's going to tell you what a program is really like more than the people who are in the program or the people who have gone through the program.
Absolutely. I couldn't echo that more. It's any program you are thinking of, you have to talk to the alumni, and particularly the more recent alumni or even current students, right? I think particularly it feels like the last couple decades, the way MBA programs have shifted, there's kind of just become this big, everyone thinks they know what a program is or isn't. I remember even when I told my dad I was thinking of an MBA, he said, why? You have a business degree. And he came from a generation where, no, the point of an MBA is you have an engineering or a technical degree. Now you need to understand business. And it's like, yes, I understand that, Dad, but it's changed a lot. And so for me, that was, and this might be getting a little ahead, but for me, when I thought about the program, that's a lot of what I needed. And so I asked those questions and really made sure I did my homework. And a lot of what sold me actually was the ability to do the double degree. Because I had the undergrad in business, I knew I would learn a lot in the MBA, but I also felt like it was, if I wasn't careful, purely from an academic perspective, it would be a lot of similar learnings and kind of so business heavy that the way corporations are going, you really need a mix of skill sets. And so when I sat down and thought about it, I wanted to make sure I married the MBA with a more technical degree, which is why I did a Master's of Science in Business Analytics.
Yeah, nothing is more marketable right now than analytics, really, in any industry and in any function. You know, you take the areas that you think are the least quantitative. You take something like, you know, human resources or creative marketing, any of those, and they're looking for people who can look at data and identify trends and understand that data. So I think the days of having a general MBA and having that be as marketable as it was are over.
Agreed.
We do have, you know, I think it's 13 double degree options now, and 7 of those are STEM. And we do find most of our students are doing those STEM areas to make themselves more marketable.
Yeah.
Which is what's great about, especially in the middle of Dallas, where we have so many heavily technology-based companies.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think it's kind of insane the growth Dallas is going through from an opportunity perspective. And one thing I would definitely encourage people is, when I thought of the MS in business analytics, it was, well, you know, I'm going to learn some programming and be able to do some cool things I can show off at work. And while, yes, absolutely, there was some of that and skill sets that I'm still using and evolving, the second side of the coin that I didn't even think of that has been astronomically helpful is I was kind of thrown in an environment where I was pretty uncomfortable. I didn't have a ton of background in it. The MS, it's not like you're protected and going with a bunch of MBA students, right? It's the pure Masters of Science. And so I was with a whole bunch of, it'll sound rude, I'll call them kids, but it was a whole bunch of, 20, 21, 22-year-olds when I was 25, 26, 27. And it felt kind of like, oh man, I don't even know if I can relate to these guys. And in a lot of the classes, it would be 30, 40 other people that came, 27 of the 30 came from a very data heavy background. And so you put Travis in a group of them and it was intimidating. But at the same time, it taught me a ton about working with people that come from a background like that in terms of very technology heavy, very quantitative focused, very, just quite frankly, very, very smart. And the ability to have a conversation, or I felt like I taught some of them how to build a story, how to build a presentation, how to take data and turn it into something meaningful, which you talk about all the quantitative programs and corporate America. At the end of the day, data is incredible, but it's only what you can do with the data and how you can influence people with the stories you tell. And so I felt like I had a decent background in that. And when I went through the program, I was learning more and more and more. And then that gave me almost a sandbox to really learn a ton of it in and really stretch that. So that was kind of something that I didn't even think of at the time, but it gave me almost two, not completely different experiences, but you do the first, year and a half, whatever it was in the MBA program, very certain experience. And then when I did more of the MS side and did, the business analytics classes, it was kind of a whole different experience. So it was a very cool way to do kind of two experiences in one, candidly.
What a great reminder that we're capable of all kinds of things that we might wonder if we still are.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch this out of the career and academic mode to the fun mode, because
all right.
I think for most people, even if you're studying all the time and it's rigorous, there's a lot of really fun stuff that happens when you are, kind of in an area with the same other people for a really long period of time that are like our cohorts are. So looking back, give me an example of something that was just either a fun story or something that really sticks in your mind as far as the relationships and the experience that you went through with your classmates.
Yeah. Well, for one, I vividly remember is we were all, you kind of go through the first semester, you're getting to know each other, but then by the second, third semester, I mean, everyone knows each other pretty well. And, you get to class early and you're all just kind of talking and maybe you're sharing some stories, but it's pretty lighthearted. And side note, part of me always felt a little bad for the professors because they didn't get our inside jokes or didn't get what half of us were talking about sometimes. But one thing I vividly remember is probably the third or fourth semester. We wrote a test that was brutal. I don't know if it was a final, but at least a fairly major test. And some of us had decided we were going to Shady's after. And then all of a sudden it turned into a few more. And all of a sudden there was about 25 of us there that it was just reminiscing about, maybe how painful that test was. But it was just kind of a very cool shared experience of we're all managing many things in our life, but we all felt it was in that moment, hey, we got through that experience. Let's spend some time together. And just the ability to then get to know everyone a little bit more, because that's so much the advantage of the MBA program. You get to really intimately get to know, I'm not going to say know everyone really well, but there's at least a handful of people that you get to know very well through the program, which is pretty dang cool.
How many people in your class would you say that you are still connected to on a, even if it's not all the time, but on a basis where you at least like touch base once in a while and know what's going on in each other's lives?
There's probably, I would say 6 to 7 at least on the list. And probably at least a couple of years ago, we had a Christmas party and there was probably 15 to 20 of us from the program there, if not more, and then spouses and kids. And so I think one of the cool things of the program is you get to know your classmates well, but then you get to know your classmates' families well, right? My wife knows a lot of my classmates pretty well, and that's just kind of a cool experience as well. You get to share so much more than just yourself with your classmates. You get to share your life experiences, but kind of everything that makes you who you are.
So I have one last question. This is a fire round. I'm going to put you on the spot.
All right.
I'm going to ask you some questions, and you're not allowed to think about it. You have to tell me what comes to your head.
Okay.
Okay. So the most memorable faculty member.
He was our very first accounting professor. I can't remember his name. Oh.
Suresh Radhakrishnan?
Yes. Yes. He woke us up very quickly in the program. That's what I'll say. That was our first semester. He was a nice welcome.
What do you miss the most?
Seeing people every day or twice a week in the program. It was just cool to see the people all the time.
What accounting term stuck in your head that you can't get rid of?
Accounts receivable.
An adjective that your classmates would use to describe you?
Nice, I hope. Funny.
Well, thank you so much, Travis, for joining us today. It was great to catch up with you. Haven't seen you in a while. And thank you for the time that you do spend when you come back and talk to our students and pay it back. I know they get a lot out of that. And I look forward to watching your career. If your next 7 years are anything like the last 7, I think you're going to be moving and shaking.
Let's hope so. But no, thank you, Lisa, for inviting me to do this. Awesome to see you. It's a very cool way to connect with, like you said, alumni, prospective students, current students, and always happy to help UTD. It's done so much for me.
We are so glad you could join us today and hear about the journey of yet another MBA GOAT. For me, my MBA was truly transitional, as it is for so many of our students. If you're wondering where an MBA can take you, reach out to us and let's talk about you. Email us at mba@utdallas.edu and feel free to ask for me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of yet another MBA GOAT podcast. Join us online at mbagoat.com to find episode notes, links, and more. Be sure to subscribe to yet another MBA GOAT podcast on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcasting app. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review. That will help spread the word about the podcast and the Jindal School's MBA programs. To learn more about the Jindal School's MBA programs, go to jindal.utdallas.edu/MBA.